They were never supposed to exist, and yet they did. Civilizations that rose from nothing, built wonders beyond imagination, then vanished as if erased by time itself. They carved cities into solid rock, built pyramids with impossible precision, and left behind languages no one can read. Their ruins lie scattered across jungles, deserts, mountaintops, and ocean floors, puzzle pieces from a forgotten chapter of human history. Tonight, we step into that shadowed past, tracing the outlines of civilizations that shouldn't exist, but somehow did. They called it the Land of Silver, a realm where rivers shimmered with metal and cities gleamed beneath the Iberian sun. To the ancient Greeks, it was the edge of the known world, a place of wonder and wealth they named Tartessos. Poets and historians described it as a kingdom of gold, home to ships that ruled the western seas long before most of Europe learned to sail. And then, silence. No record of war, no tale of destruction. Tartessos simply vanished. Its cities disappeared, its people forgotten, its treasures buried under centuries of soil and myth. Archaeologists searching the valleys of southern Spain have unearthed fragments, intricate jewelry, golden relics, inscriptions in a script that no one has deciphered. They hint at a kingdom both familiar and alien, one that glowed briefly before fading into obscurity. Was Tartessos a real place, or a Mediterranean Atlantis, a remnant of something even older? The same enigma echoes across the world. Beneath the grassy mounds of Gyeongju, the ancient capital of Korea's Silla kingdom, archaeologists discovered royal tombs filled with gold so delicate it defies explanation. Inside lay treasures from across the world, Roman glass, Persian gems, and crowns forged from wafer-thin gold that stretched toward the heavens like branches of a cosmic tree. The craftsmanship seems almost impossible for the time, and the connections it suggests even more so. How did objects from the Mediterranean find their way to the Korean peninsula over 1,500 years ago? The answer may lie in a forgotten web of maritime trade routes, a silk road of the sea that linked distant civilizations in ways modern historians never imagined. And yet even trade cannot explain the cosmic motifs carved into Silla artifacts, or why so much of their language and mythology has vanished, leaving only symbols that seem to whisper of something greater. A kingdom that measured time not by power, but by stars, thousands of miles west. Beneath the soft volcanic stone of Cappadocia, another mystery lies hidden. In 1963, a man renovating his basement broke through a wall and discovered a tunnel, one that led to an entire underground city. Derinkuyu, a subterranean metropolis large enough to house 20,000 people, complete with kitchens, schools, churches, stables, and miles of tunnels. Its ventilation system still works perfectly. But who built it and why? Mainstream archaeologists credit the Phrygians or early Christians, but the deeper levels of the city appear far older, too old perhaps to fit any known timeline. Some believe it was a refuge from ancient cataclysms, a place where survivors of an Ice Age disaster retreated underground. Others suggest it was built to escape a threat from above, solar storms, meteors, or something stranger still. Whatever its purpose, the precision of its design is undeniable. The deeper one descends, the more it feels as though this vast city was not carved by primitive tools, but engineered by minds that understood stone, airflow, and survival in ways we barely comprehend today. In the high valleys of Colombia, the statues of San Agustin stand guard over an empty landscape. Hundreds of stone figures, warriors, gods, animal spirits, watch the horizon with silent, unblinking eyes. No one knows who carved them or why. The people who made them left no written language, no trace of their identity, only art so intricate it feels alive. Some statues bear the faces of men, others of beings that look almost alien, with fangs, wings, and inhuman eyes. Beneath their gaze lie ancient tombs filled with offerings, gold, and ceramics, evidence of a civilization both spiritual and monumental. But there is no record of their rise or their fall. Like so many others, they appeared, flourished, and disappeared, leaving behind a message carved in stone that no one can read. across the Kalahari Desert. Another legend persists, the lost city said to lie beneath the dunes. In the 19th century, explorers reported seeing ruins made of cut stone, walls half buried in sand, and paths leading to nowhere. They spoke of a vanished kingdom, forgotten by time, its people long gone. Modern archaeology has yet to find proof, but satellite imagery and shifting sands reveal strange patterns, lines, ridges, and shapes that seem too deliberate to be natural. Perhaps the desert hides more than mirages. Africa's history is full of unexpected grandeur. Great Zimbabwe, the cities of Mali, the temples of Sudan. Could another civilization have once thrived in the Kalahari, swallowed by time and the wind? In Nevada's Lovelock cave, whispers of giants persist. Native Paiute legends tell of the Siteka, towering red-haired beings who terrorized tribes before being hunted and trapped inside a cave that was then set ablaze. In 1911, miners digging for bat guano unearthed ancient tools, baskets and bones, some reportedly massive, with skulls larger than any normal humans. Official reports later downplayed the discovery, attributing it to exaggeration and misinterpretation, yet some artifacts remain unexplained. Oversized sandals, red-stained hair, and stories that refuse to fade. Myth or memory? The desert keeps its secrets, and Lovelock's shadows still seem to breathe with questions older than science can answer. Far from the desert, in the swamps of Louisiana, lies Poverty Point, one of the most sophisticated ancient sites in North America. Built over 3,000 years ago, its 6 concentric ridges and towering earthen mounds form patterns so precise they can only be seen from above. Without metal tools, wheels, or beasts of burden, its builders moved millions of tons of soil to create a city aligned with the heavens. Artifacts found there: copper from the Great Lakes, stones from the Appalachians, shells from the Gulf, prove that its people traded across vast distances. And then, around 1100 BCE, they vanished, leaving behind no writing, no name, only the quiet geometry of their genius. The same story repeats across continents. Beneath Turkey, within the Andes, across Africa and Asia, civilizations appear out of nowhere, advanced, organized, and astonishingly skilled, only to disappear without a trace. Their ruins suggest knowledge we've lost. Astronomy encoded in stone, architecture immune to earthquakes, cities aligned with the stars. Perhaps these were isolated achievements of human brilliance, or perhaps they were fragments of something larger, a forgotten global inheritance, a memory of a world before ours that lived, thrived, and fell long before our histories began. Each ruin, each artifact, each undeciphered symbol is a whisper from that hidden world. Together, they form a single question that refuses to die. How much of our past is still unknown? Somewhere beneath the soil, beneath the waves, and within the silence of these ancient stones, the answer waits, unchanged, patient, eternal. Unlike the pharaohs of Egypt or the priest-kings of Mesopotamia, the people of the Indus-Sarasvati civilization left behind no palaces, no grand statues, no royal tombs. Their cities show no signs of coercive power. Instead, they reflect a remarkable equality, an orderly, efficient, and clean society where authority was expressed through design, not domination. If there were rulers, they did not demand monuments to their own glory. The cities themselves, with their perfect grids and advanced drainage systems, were their legacy. Yet for all their brilliance, their voice remains silent. The key to their mystery lies in their script, hundreds of seals and inscriptions carved into stone, pottery, and metal. These markings, usually short clusters of 5 to 10 symbols paired with animals or abstract shapes, remain undeciphered. They are neither alphabetic nor purely pictorial. Without a bilingual key, like the Rosetta Stone, their meaning is lost to time. Scholars have speculated endlessly. Were they trade records, hymns to unknown gods, or warnings of an approaching disaster? Until this script is understood, the Indus-Sarasvati civilization remains mute. its thoughts locked behind symbols no one alive can read. The story grows stranger when we consider the river that may have been their lifeline, the Sarasvati. Ancient Indian texts speak of this sacred river, yet no such river exists on modern maps. Satellite imagery and geological surveys have revealed the ghost of one, a dried riverbed running parallel to the Indus, vast enough to have once sustained entire cities. Many now believe the Sarasvati was real, its disappearance caused by tectonic shifts and shifting monsoons. When the river died, so too may have the civilization that depended on it. The collapse of the Indus-Sarasvati culture is unlike most in human history. There is no evidence of conquest or war. The cities were not burned, their walls not toppled. They were simply left behind. Environmental change may have made agriculture impossible. Disease or trade collapse might have hollowed out the population. Yet the quietness of their end feels almost deliberate, as though they simply walked away from their world and never returned. Their achievements, however, remain staggering. Across hundreds of miles, their cities shared standardized weights and measures. They mastered metallurgy, crafting with copper, bronze, tin, and lead. They traded as far as Mesopotamia. Indus seals have been found in ancient Sumerian cities. Their artisans made jewelry, toys, and tools of exquisite precision. They even practiced dentistry thousands of years before modern medicine. Everything they did suggests an advanced and thoughtful people, yet they left no record of their rulers or gods. It is as though this civilization chose humility. They built not for kings, but for communities. They lived not for conquest, but for order. Their legacy whispers of a society that measured greatness not in monuments or empires, but in harmony. And then, one day, they were gone. Perhaps they were erased by nature. Perhaps by time. Or perhaps we simply do not yet speak their language. In the floodplains of southern Mesopotamia, the first known civilization of the world took root, Sumer. But even here, there are hints that something older came before. The Sumerians recorded everything: laws, myths, trade, even the reigns of their kings. Among their most mysterious documents are the Sumerian king lists, clay tablets that name rulers who lived not for decades, but for thousands of years. 10 kings, the texts claim, ruled before a great flood. One reigned for 2,800 years, another for 36,000. To modernize, these sound like myths. But why would a culture as meticulous as the Sumerians preserve such impossible records? Some scholars interpret these as symbolic, each long reign representing an era or celestial cycle. Others believe they may preserve distorted memories of an earlier age, a civilization erased by catastrophe. The Great Flood appears in dozens of traditions across the world: the Babylonian, the Greek, the Hebrew, the Hindu. Could these stories all echo a real event? One that ended an entire epoch of humanity? Archaeological layers beneath the earliest Sumerian cities, Eridu, Uruk and others, reveal remnants of even older settlements. Beneath Eridu's Temple of Enki, excavations have found successive layers of construction, each older, simpler and more primitive, stacked one upon another. These layers stretch back thousands of years before Sumer officially began. The people of this forgotten era, sometimes called the Ubaid culture, built temples, used complex pottery, and lived in planned communities. They left behind no clear language or name, but their fingerprints are everywhere in the foundations of Sumer itself. The Sumerian language remains one of history's great enigmas. It has no known relatives. It appears suddenly fully developed with no traceable evolution. This linguistic isolation has led some to believe it was carried from elsewhere, perhaps by survivors of an earlier civilization, preserving fragments of an older tongue. The myths only deepen the mystery. The Epic of Gilgamesh, the oldest known literary work, describes a world already ancient in its time. Cities built by divine kings, wisdom brought by gods, and a flood that wiped the earth clean. Gilgamesh's journey to find immortality leads him to a man who survived the deluge, Utnapishtim, who tells him of a time before history. A golden age swept away. Beneath the sands of Sumer may lie the bones of a civilization that came before civilization itself. Its echoes live in myths of immortal kings, in languages with no ancestors, and in floods that erased entire worlds. Perhaps Sumer was not the dawn of human history, but the memory of an even earlier light. In Sumerian legend, there is one name that stands out: Aratta. A radiant city of the east, rich in lapis lazuli, gold, and divine favor. The stories describe it as a rival to Uruk, home to artists and priests who built temples that shone like the sun. These tales are part myth, part history, etched into clay thousands of years ago. Yet the geography described is real, mountainous, distant, likely in what is now Iran. Archaeologists have uncovered clues that suggest the myths may have been based on fact. In the highlands of Iran, sites such as Jiroft, Tepe Yahya, and Shaddad reveal evidence of an advanced Bronze Age culture, urban planning, trade networks, intricate carvings, and proto-writing, all dating back over 5,000 years. Jiroft, in particular, has yielded artifacts so sophisticated that some call it the cradle before Mesopotamia. Lapis lazuli found their matches the material referenced in Sumerian texts. And the region itself would have been a natural crossroads between Mesopotamia and Central Asia. Aratta may have been real, a highland kingdom whose wealth and artistry inspired Sumerian legend. Like all ancient cities, it eventually faded, undone by earthquakes, climate change, or conquest. But the memory of its brilliance survived, transformed into myth. Perhaps when the Sumerians spoke of divine messengers and radiant kings, they were remembering not gods, but neighbors, people of an older world whose civilization shone and fell long before theirs. Far across the ocean, in the cliffs of the American Southwest, another lost world took shape. The ancestral Puebloans, once known as the Anasazi, built entire cities into the sides of canyons. Mesa Verde and Chaco Canyon were their masterpieces. Multi-story dwellings, ceremonial chambers, roads carved straight through stone. For over 1,000 years, they thrived in harmony with the harsh desert. Then, without warning, they were gone. Food lay untouched. Tools sat where they were dropped. Fires were left burning. An entire civilization vanished almost overnight. Drought, warfare, spiritual crisis, each has been proposed, none proven. The descendants of these people, the modern Pueblo tribes, say their ancestors did not die out but moved on, guided by prophecy to new lands. Yet the suddenness of their departure and the silence that followed still haunt the canyons they left behind. Off the coast of Japan, another enigma lies beneath the waves. The Yonaguni Monument, a massive underwater formation of terraces, steps, and straight-edged walls, looks uncannily like human architecture. Some researchers insist it is man-made, a relic of an Ice Age civilization submerged when sea levels rose 12,000 years ago. Others say it is a natural formation shaped by fault lines and erosion. The truth may lie somewhere between, but as divers descend along its geometric corridors, the sense of design feels undeniable. If Yonaguni is artificial, it rewrites the origins of civilization in Asia. The deserts of Peru hold another mystery: the Paracas skulls. Discovered in the 1920s, these elongated crania appear too large and too structurally distinct to be explained by head binding alone. Some are 25% larger in volume, with unusual bone structures and even genetic anomalies. DNA tests have produced baffling results, suggesting unknown haplogroups or mutations. Whether these people were a unique branch of humanity or something stranger, the question remains: why did so many ancient cultures across the world shape their heads in the same way? What or who were they imitating? Across the Mediterranean, around 1200 BCE, the world collapsed. Great empires, the Egyptians, Hittites, and Mycenaeans, fell one after another. The cause, according to ancient inscriptions, was invasion by a mysterious coalition known as the Sea Peoples. They came from nowhere, wielding fire and steel, destroying cities and vanishing just as quickly. Their origins are still unknown. Some see them as refugees from collapsing societies, others as pirates or survivors of a lost homeland erased by disaster. In their wake came centuries of darkness, and high in the Andes, where Lake Titicaca glitters under the sun, divers have discovered something astonishing: a submerged city beneath the water's surface. Stone terraces, roads, and temples lie preserved in the depths, older than the Inca, perhaps older than history itself. Nearby, the ruins of Tiwanaku bear the marks of cosmic knowledge, structures aligned with the stars, carved from massive stones fitted so precisely that even modern engineers struggle to explain them. Local legends tell of Viracocha, the bearded god who rose from the lake and taught humanity before disappearing. Perhaps these ruins are his legacy, the remains of a civilization that once touched the heavens and then sank beneath the waves. Everywhere we look, under desert sands, beneath oceans carved into mountains, the same story repeats. Civilizations rise, create wonders, and vanish, leaving behind ruins that defy their supposed capabilities. Maybe these were isolated miracles of human ingenuity, or maybe they were fragments of something greater, a global tapestry of knowledge lost to time. The jungle, the desert, the sea, they all whisper the same secret: we are not the first. And somewhere beneath stone and silence, the rest of the story waits, deep within the jungles of Petén. Long before the rise of the classical Maya, there was another power, an older, forgotten civilization with the knowledge to drain swamps, build massive stone causeways through mountains, and raise monuments as immense as the Great Pyramid of Giza. One of the greatest of these sites is El Mirador, an ancient city whose colossal pyramid, La Danta, rises more than 230 feet into the air and ranks among the largest structures ever built by human hands. Surrounding it are vast administrative complexes, reservoirs the size of football fields, and a network of elevated roads linking it to other buried cities. For centuries, the jungle kept them hidden until LiDAR technology peeled back the canopy and revealed the traces of a lost empire. Who built these cities? Scholars call them the pre-classic Maya, but the sheer scale of the discoveries has led some to wonder whether this was a distinct civilization altogether, one that predated and perhaps gave rise to the Maya we know. These builders displayed centralized authority, standing armies, and agricultural systems capable of sustaining millions. Their pyramids were not only temples, but political statements, aligned with celestial cycles and constructed with a mathematical precision that mirrored the heavens. Then, without warning, they vanished. By the time cities like Tikal and Copan rose centuries later, many of these pre-classic sites had already been abandoned, reclaimed by the forest. No one knows why. Drought, environmental exhaustion, warfare, all are possible. But perhaps the Maya inherited not only the jungles, roads, and myths of this older civilization, but also its downfall. Some inscriptions from later periods even speak of ancient cities swallowed by time, as if the Maya themselves remembered echoes of a golden age that ended in silence. Artifacts found in the region complicate the story. Hydraulic systems, carved stone unlike typical Mayan style, and sculptures bearing Olmec-like features hundreds of miles from their homeland. It may have been a hybrid culture, a fusion of early Maya, Olmec, and something else entirely, a civilization erased so completely that only LiDAR could resurrect its bones. The forests of Guatemala, Belize, and southern Mexico are now understood not as untouched wilderness, but as vast graveyards of lost worlds. The canopy hides entire civilizations, their stories still buried in moss and soil. The Maya, once thought to be the architects of Mesoamerican genius, may have been the inheritors of an even older tradition, one that organized a continent-spanning network and then vanished almost without a trace. What remains waiting beneath the leaves? And when we uncover it, will we even recognize the story it tells? Long before Egypt's pharaohs, before the first dynasties along the Nile, there was a time the ancient Egyptians themselves called Zep Tepi, the first time. It was not myth, but memory, an era when gods ruled on earth and taught humanity the arts of civilization. The Turin King List, a fragile papyrus housed in Italy, records the names of divine and semi-divine rulers who reigned for thousands of years before the first human pharaohs. Greek historians like Manetho echoed these accounts, claiming that Egypt had been ruled by gods and demigods for more than 30,000 years before Menes united the two lands. Mainstream scholars dismiss Zep Tepi as a theological metaphor, but others suspect that these records preserve fragments of an older reality. The monuments of ancient Egypt seem to remember something beyond their official history. The Great Pyramid, dated conventionally to 2500 BCE, displays engineering precision still unmatched. Massive granite blocks fitted without mortar, alignments, with stellar and solar points accurate to fractions of a degree, and an absence of inscriptions suggesting it was never a royal tomb. The Osirian at Abydos, a subterranean complex of 100-ton granite blocks, bears no stylistic resemblance to the surrounding temples of Seti I. It appears as though Seti discovered and built around it rather than constructing it himself. Even the Great Sphinx hints at deeper antiquity. Geological studies suggest its enclosure shows signs of water erosion, impossible in the arid desert climate of the dynastic period, but consistent with heavy rainfall over 7,000 years ago, when the Sahara was lush. If true, the Sphinx could predate dynastic Egypt by millennia, a surviving sentinel from Zep Tepi itself. The followers of Horus, described as luminous beings who ruled between the age of gods and men, may have been remnants of that lost civilization, bearers of wisdom, astronomy, and architecture that seeded the splendor of pharaonic Egypt. Ancient Egyptian cosmology speaks of cycles, ages destroyed and renewed by floods and fire. The Edfu texts tell of an island of the gods destroyed by a deluge, from which survivors came to Egypt to rebuild. Some believe this describes not allegory, but history, connecting Egypt to the global memory of a cataclysm remembered elsewhere as Atlantis. Later Arab chroniclers wrote that the Great Pyramid was built by King Saurid, a visionary who foresaw a coming flood and sought to preserve humanity's knowledge. In other traditions, Saurid becomes Enoch, or Hermes Trismegistus, the same figure who bridges myth and science across civilizations. Perhaps Zep Tepi was not merely the beginning of Egypt, but the last remnant of an earlier world, a world erased by catastrophe and remembered only in fragments of stone and myth. The gods may not have been divine in the way we imagine, but survivors of a lost age, passing down the remnants of a vanished science. What we call mythology may be the last faint echo of history far older than we dare admit. Across cultures, the story repeats: the flood. Myths of destruction by water exist in nearly every civilization: Noah's Ark, the Sumerian Utnapishtim, the Greek Deucalion, the Hindu Manu. For centuries, these were dismissed as moral tales, but geology now reveals that around 12,000 years ago, as the Ice Age ended, sea levels rose hundreds of feet. Coastlines vanished, and entire habitats were swallowed by the sea. Some scientists propose the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis, that fragments of a comet struck the Earth, triggering massive fires, rapid melting, and global floods. If so, survivors of this apocalypse would have carried the memory forward through myth, encoding it in every culture as divine retribution or cosmic renewal. Underwater ruins off India's coast, in Japan's Yonaguni, and in the Caribbean may be remnants of those drowned worlds. They suggest that civilization, at least in its earliest form, may predate what we now call history. If the flood myths preserve truth, then they are not allegory but testimony. records of a cataclysm that ended an age of forgotten greatness. The deluge was not just water, it was time itself, washing away memory and leaving only fragments of what came before. Again and again, anomalies surface that defy explanation. A shoe print pressed into stone millions of years old in Nevada. A hammer sealed inside ancient rock in Texas. A nuclear reaction site in Gabon, operating 2 billion years ago. Each discovery is dismissed, explained away, or forgotten. Yet they whisper the same impossible idea, that history is not linear, but cyclical, and that we may not be the first to walk this path of civilization. Perhaps the Earth has seen many dawns of intelligence, each rising from the ashes of the last. Perhaps the ruins we find are not beginnings, but remnants, shadows of worlds erased by fire, flood, or the slow turning of the planet's clock. What we call prehistory may simply be the memory of a time we no longer remember, a time when gods ruled and man had not yet forgotten how to listen to the stones. In the Aegean world, the Minoans once flourished in peace and beauty. Their island, empire centered on Crete, pulsing with color, art and architecture that seemed to breathe life itself. When their civilization began to unravel, the Mycenaeans from the Greek mainland rose to prominence. Yet it appears they did not build upon the Minoan legacy as much as they consumed it. They absorbed its art, its religion, and even its architecture, wearing the skin of a dying culture while the original creators faded into silence. The collapse may have been less conquest and more contagion, an implosion of resources, environmental exhaustion, and political fractures that left them unable to withstand the combined weight of nature's fury and their own overreach. Without fortifications or armies strong enough to repel disaster, the Minoans succumbed to fate. Still, their echo endures. The legend of Atlantis, a prosperous, advanced island civilization destroyed by water, bears striking resemblance to their story. Plato's account may well be a cultural memory of Minoan Crete, retold through centuries of distortion. Walking through the ruins of Knossos today, one can feel the remnants of a brilliance, both human and tragic. Staircases that lead nowhere, frescoes of forgotten rituals, and stones that whisper of a people who touched greatness only to be swallowed by the sea. Perhaps it wasn't divine wrath that drowned them, but the indifference of the earth itself, stirred by volcanic fire and human ambition. Yet even submerged in myth, the Minoans still speak through every wall, every pigment, every silent chamber where their voices once sang. Far out in the Atlantic, the Canary Islands rise from the sea like ancient memories breaking the surface of time. When the Spanish arrived in the 15th century, they found not wilderness, but a people seemingly misplaced in history, the Guanches. They lived in caves, dressed in animal hides, and used stone tools, yet they were tall, fair-skinned, and bore strikingly European features. They claimed descent from lands long lost beneath the sea, and built step pyramids that echoed those in Egypt and the Americas. To their conquerors, they were an impossibility, Stone Age people who carried whispers of a forgotten world. The Guanches left behind puzzles that resist explanation. Their pyramids, precisely aligned with the solstices, display astronomical knowledge far beyond what isolation should allow. Their mummification practices parallel those of ancient Egypt, complete with preservation techniques that remain unexplained. DNA traces link them loosely to North African Berbers, yet hints of older European ancestry persist, suggesting migrations predating recorded seafaring. Their legends spoke of a sunken homeland, and some believe they were descendants of a prehistoric maritime civilization, perhaps even survivors of Atlantis. But their story ended swiftly. Disease, conquest, and assimilation erased them within a century. Their voices are gone, their language reduced to a few fragments. Only their ruins remain, stone pyramids, caves, and preserved bodies, mute reminders of a people out of time. Across the highlands of Ethiopia and Eritrea, the broken obelisks of Axum rise like fossilized thunderbolts, the last monuments of a kingdom that once rivaled Rome. Between the 1st and 7th centuries AD, Axum ruled an empire of gold, ivory, and incense. Its merchants connected Africa to Arabia, India, and the Mediterranean, and its kings minted coins bearing their own faces and inscriptions in Ge'ez, the ancestor of the script still used in Ethiopia today. The Axumites carved immense granite monoliths with false doors and windows, as if mocking mortality itself. The tallest once towered over 30 meters, hewn and erected without the aid of iron or pulleys, a feat that still challenges modern engineers. But the empire that proclaimed its eternity faded into silence. Trade routes shifted, forests vanished, the soil eroded, and new powers rose along the Red Sea. By the 8th century, Axum had withdrawn into the mountains, its grandeur buried under centuries of neglect. Later explorers, blinded by prejudice, refused to believe Africans had built such wonders. Yet Axum was no echo of foreign influence. It was one of the world's first Christian empires, corresponding with Byzantium, housing bishops and producing art and architecture unmatched in Africa's ancient world. Its fall was not destruction, but transformation. The empire lived on in faith, in language, and in legend. Even now, in the city of Axum, monks guard a chapel said to contain the Ark of the Covenant, a relic of divine history intertwined with myth. The kingdom may have vanished from maps, but its spirit still breathes through the highlands, reminding us that disappearance is not always extinction. Sometimes it is endurance wearing another face. On the plains of Greece, the Mycenaeans built their citadels of stone and ruled with power and precision. From 1600 to 1100 BCE, they were the architects of an age that gave birth to the legends of Troy, Agamemnon, and Achilles. Yet their fall was sudden and complete. Palaces burned, cities emptied, and their written language, Linear B, disappeared for 400 years. Historians point to drought, earthquakes, and invasion by the mysterious sea peoples. But the truth may be more complex, a cascade of crises that toppled a civilization too rigid to bend. When Greece was reborn centuries later, it was as if the Mycenaeans had never existed. Their memory survived only through myth. Homer's epics turned history into poetry, and the real kings of Mycenae became ghosts wrapped in gold. The irony is that their destruction made room for something greater. Out of their ruins came classical Greece, the cradle of philosophy, art, and democracy. Perhaps their greatest gift was the silence they left behind, a blank canvas upon which new worlds could be written. In the cliffs of Anatolia, the Lycians carved their dead into the mountains, creating entire necropolises that looked like cities for spirits. They were sailors, thinkers, and builders, governing themselves through one of history's earliest federations, a system so advanced it inspired the architects of modern democracy millennia later. Yet their language remains a half-deciphered riddle, and their identity faded as empires swept over them. Earthquakes, wars, and Roman assimilation erased their independence until they became footnotes in the histories of others. Still, their stone tombs stand defiant, watching the sea. They built for eternity, even if memory betrayed them. Far from the Mediterranean, in the heartland of North America, another lost city rose and fell, Cahokia, near modern-day St. Louis. In the 12th century, it was a metropolis of tens of thousands, with monumental mounds, vast plazas, and astronomical observatories. It was larger than London at the time, the center of a civilization built not on stone, but on earth and wood. Yet by the time Europeans arrived, it had vanished. Climate change, deforestation, disease, and internal conflict are all suspected. But the truth remains uncertain. The people of Cahokia simply dispersed, leaving behind no written record, only the silent mounds rising from the soil like echoes of forgotten kings. Across the hills of Tuscany and Umbria, the Etruscans left their mark on Rome long before Rome conquered them. They built cities, developed art and metallurgy, and taught the Romans the very symbols of power: the toga, the fasces, the augur's staff. Their language remains only partially understood, a tongue that refuses to yield its secrets. Rome absorbed them piece by piece until they ceased to exist as a people. Yet their legacy runs through Western civilization like an invisible current. Their gods became Rome's gods, their customs Rome's law. Their disappearance was not annihilation, but transformation, the quiet assimilation of greatness into a greater whole. In the misty heights of the Andes, the Chachapoya built their world among clouds. Their stone cities clung to cliffs. Their dead were entombed in coffins, perched on impossible precipices. The Incas called them the Cloud People, pale and fierce, distinct even among mountain nations. They resisted conquest for centuries before being absorbed into the Incan Empire, and then erased by the Spanish that followed. What remains of them are bones, fortresses like Quilap, and mummies staring eternally from mountain walls. The Chachapoya vanished, not through cataclysm, but through absorption, their stories scattered like mist across the valleys they once ruled. Off the coast of Cornwall, legend tells of a land called Lyonesse, a kingdom swallowed by the sea in a single night. Fishermen speak of hearing church bells beneath the waves, of catching carved stones in their nets. Geologists confirm that Britain's coast once extended further, that rising seas thousands of years ago drowned entire valleys. But myth compresses centuries into a single tragedy. Whether or not Lyonesse truly existed, the story preserves a truth older than history itself, that no land, no civilization, no glory is immune to the sea. The waves are patient. They always take back what is theirs. And far across the Pacific, on the lonely volcanic rock of Easter Island, the people of Rapa Nui carved giants from stone. The Moai, with their blank faces and solemn gazes, still stand guard over a civilization that rose and fell in isolation. The story of their collapse is often told as one of self-destruction. Forests felled, soils ruined, and a people starved by their own ambition. Yet the truth may be more tragic. The island's decline coincided with the arrival of Europeans, with disease, slavery, and cultural ruin following in their wake. What survived was silence, and the statues, still standing, still watching. Whether Rapa Nui's fall was caused by its own excess or by the world's intrusion, the lesson is the same. Isolation breeds both brilliance and fragility. The Moai endure, a mirror for every civilization that has ever believed itself eternal. In the heart of West Africa, beneath centuries of earth, archaeologists unearthed terracotta heads, serene, lifelike, and hauntingly human. The Nok culture, one of Africa's oldest known civilizations, flourished over 2,000 years ago and then vanished, leaving only these fragments of clay and mystery. Their artistry speaks of mastery, their silence of loss. Like so many before and after, they remind us that civilization is not a straight line, but a cycle of emergence and erasure. What we call ancient is only the surface of something deeper, a buried heartbeat still echoing beneath the soil of time. They were called the Nok, a people whose artistry and metallurgy flourished in the heart of West Africa long before written history touched the continent. Between 1000 BCE and 300 CE, in what is now central Nigeria, they shaped clay and iron with a mastery that confounded scholars millennia later. While Greece was still learning to forge bronze and Rome did not yet exist, the Nok had already discovered how to smelt iron, an innovation that reshaped human civilization. Their terracotta sculptures remain some of the oldest and most expressive works of art ever uncovered in Africa. Human faces, with wide eyes, flared nostrils, and parted lips, gazing out across time as though aware of their own immortality. The first of these figures surfaced by accident in the 1940s, unearthed during tin mining. Soon more emerged, heads, torsos, animals, each one distinct, lifelike and deliberate. But the excitement of discovery quickly turned to loss. Many artifacts were looted or sold to collectors, stripped of archaeological context. The earth that could have told their story was destroyed in the search for ore. What remains now are fragments, beautiful, mysterious, and frustratingly incomplete. Their iron furnaces, scattered across the plains, suggest a highly organized society capable of supporting artisans, traders, and farmers. To master ironworking demands complex knowledge, control of fire, ore and air, and the Nok achieved it independently, without influence from the Mediterranean or Asia. This revelation shattered long-held assumptions that sub-Saharan Africa's technological progress depended on the North. The Nok stand as proof that innovation was never the monopoly of any one region.
And yet, they vanished. There are no written records, no inscriptions, no monuments, only silence. Climate shifts may have turned fertile lands into savanna, forcing migration. Perhaps deforestation and soil exhaustion undermined their food supply. Or maybe disease or conflict fractured them from within. No one knows for certain. It is as though the Noach simply dissolved into the land, their culture carried off by wind and time. But their art remains a whisper carved in clay that refuses to die. Their terracotta faces seem to watch us, patient and knowing, as if aware that their rediscovery is not their end, but their rebirth. Through them, we are reminded that the earth still holds forgotten chapters of humanity's stories, buried, not lost, waiting for those who listen to the silence between the ruins. In the rocky highlands of Anatolia, another lost world once thrived. The Hittites, for centuries dismissed as biblical legend, emerged from the soil of Turkey in the late 19th century, an empire that rivaled Egypt, Babylon, and Assyria, and yet vanished so completely that history forgot it existed. Their rediscovery began with the unearthing of clay tablets covered in strange cuneiform and hieroglyphic markings. When deciphered, they revealed a civilization of engineers, diplomats, and warriors whose influence spanned from the Aegean to Mesopotamia. The Hittites were the first to forge iron weapons on a large scale, the first to record international treaties, the most famous being the Treaty of Kadesh, signed with Egypt's Ramses II after one of the largest chariot battles in history. Their cities, especially their capital, Hattusa, were ringed by massive walls, guarded by lions carved in stone, and filled with archives of thousands of tablets documenting everything from trade to religion. They were a world power. And then, around 1200 BCE, they were gone. Their cities burned, their records buried, their gods abandoned. Scholars debate the cause, perhaps famine, perhaps invasion by the mysterious sea peoples, perhaps internal revolt. Letters from their final days speak of hunger, drought, and desperation. Yet, no single event explains how such a vast empire could vanish so completely. When their ruins were found, millennia later, they were so alien that early archaeologists couldn't believe they were native to Anatolia. The Hittites' legacy, though forgotten, endured in secret. Their laws influenced later empires. Their deities blended into Greek and Near Eastern pantheons. Even the Hebrew Bible's passing mention of them was not myth, it was memory. They remind us that history is fragile, that even the mightiest civilizations can be erased, leaving behind only scattered stones and the faint echo of a name. Far to the northwest, along the banks of the Danube, another enigma sleeps beneath the soil. The Inca culture. Long before the first pharaohs ruled Egypt, before Sumer raised its ziggurats, the people of Inca built orderly settlements across the Balkans. Between 5700 and 4500 BCE, they raised homes with foundations, paved floors, and drainage. True towns, older than any known in Europe. Their pottery shimmered with intricate designs. Their tools gleamed with early copper, and most mysterious of all, they inscribed symbols into clay tablets, deliberate symbols that some scholars believe may represent the world's oldest written language. If that is true, then the story of writing does not begin in Mesopotamia, but here, among farmers and artisans who vanished thousands of years before the pyramids rose. Their script, found on shards in Serbia, Bulgaria, and Romania, remains undiscovered. It may have been a form of record-keeping, religious expression, or something else entirely. Whatever it meant, its meaning died with them. The Vinca decline remains an unsolved puzzle. Perhaps the land could no longer sustain them, or waves of migrating tribes displaced them. What endures are their figurines, human shapes with wide eyes and elongated faces. Alien in appearance, yet undeniably human in spirit. In their silence, they seem to watch us the way the Noach statues do, as if both civilizations, separated by continents and millennia, knew they would one day be rediscovered. Beneath the Arabian sands lies another legend, the lost Atlantis of the desert. Described in ancient texts as Irem of the Pillars, it was said to have defied God's will and been swallowed by the earth. For centuries, it was thought to be a myth until modern explorers, guided by satellite images, traced the ancient incense routes that once connected Arabia to the Mediterranean. Deep in the Rub al-Khali Desert, they found ruins near a massive sinkhole-collapsed towers, pottery, and walls that matched the legend's description. Whether Uber was a grand city or a network of trading posts, its sudden destruction by the earth itself seemed to echo the old stories. It had grown rich on frankincense, a commodity worth more than gold in antiquity, fueling temples from Egypt to Rome. Then, perhaps through erosion or divine irony, the ground beneath it gave way. The city fell into the void, its wealth swallowed by the desert. Uber's discovery blurs the line between myth and memory. Like so many lost civilizations, it forces us to ask how much of what we call legend is merely history buried under sand. In the misty highlands of Appalachia, far from deserts or empires, a massive boulder called Juticala Rock lies carved with hundreds of mysterious symbols by eyes, handprints, and looping lines that no one can fully explain. The Cherokee spoke of Sulkalu, a slant-eyed giant whose seven-fingered hand left marks upon the stone. But even they claimed the carvings predated their people. Some believe it to be a boundary marker, others a star map, or perhaps a record of ancient migrations. Its symbols echo those found in distant lands from Britain to Africa, raising potentializing questions about forgotten connections across oceans and ages. Whatever its origin, Juticala Rock endures as a message from a time before history, a reminder that even in the quiet hills of the modern world, the earth still keeps secrets in plain sight. And so, across continents and ages, the pattern repeats. The Noek, the Hittites, the Vinca Uberal, brilliant, all vanished. Their stones, scripts, and myths whisper the same refrain, that civilization is not a straight ascent, but a cycle of forgetting and rediscovery. Beneath every field, beneath every desert, beneath every city, lie the bones and voices of worlds that came before. They are not gone. They are waiting, patient as the soil, for us to listen again. When explorer G.A. Farini returned from the Kalahari Desert in the late 1800s, his words ignited imaginations across Europe. He spoke of massive weathered stones carved with geometric precision, of formations that looked like ancient walls stretching across a plateau as if they once belonged to a forgotten kingdom. Newspapers called it the lost city of the Kalahari, and the legend was born. Soon, others followed, explorers, dreamers, treasure hunters, chasing the mirage of a vanished civilization buried beneath the dunes. Some returned with tales of strange ruins, others with nothing at all. A few were never heard from again. The Sand People, ancient inhabitants of the desert, spoke of a sacred place known as the Land of the Ancestors. It was said that great beings once walked there before vanishing into the wind, leaving behind silence and stone. Whether they meant real people or spirits remains uncertain. No conclusive proof has ever been found, no city walls, inscriptions, or artifacts that clearly belong to an urban culture, only whispers and shifting sands. Yet the Kalahari is vast, over 900,000 square kilometers of dunes and scrub. Beneath its surface, entire worlds could sleep unseen. Satellite imagery offers hints of patterns and shapes, but heat and mirage distort the truth. Maybe the ruins are real and still buried deep below. Or maybe Farin mistook nature's artistry for man's creation. Some geologists argue he was looking at dolerite outcrops, natural formations that fracture into wall-like shapes. Others say he exaggerated, crafting a story to enthrall a Europe hungry for mystery. But Africa is full of precedents. Great Zimbabwe, Mapungubwe, the cities of Nubia and Malial once dismissed as legend until proven real. If such civilizations flourished where no one expected, why not one in the Kalahari too? The desert itself seems to encourage belief. Its silence feels alive, its emptiness haunted. You can walk for hours beneath the burning sun and feel the weight of unseen eyes, as if the land remembers. Perhaps memory does linger, there echoes of voices carried on the wind, traces of people long forgotten. Whether the lost city exists or not, its legend has become part of the desert's soul. A reminder that not all ruins are made of stone. Some exist only in the space between myth and truth, waiting for someone brave enough to look again. Far to the north in Nevada, a different mystery sleeps inside a cave carved into limestone cliffs. To the casual eye, it's just a dry, dark chamber in the desert. But for centuries, the northern Paiute people told stories of what once happened there. They spoke of the Siteka, a race of giant, red-haired beings who attacked their ancestors, stealing food and even people. According to legend, the tribes united to drive the giants into a cave, set its entrance aflame, and sealed them inside. For generations, it was only a story. Then, in 1911, two guano miners digging in Lovelock Cave stumbled upon artifacts buried in the dust-woven baskets. Fishing tools, duck decoys, and bones. Newspapers soon claimed the bones belonged to giants. Some said 8 feet tall, with red hair still clinging to their skulls. Museums reportedly took possession of the remains, though their trail has grown cold over time. Modern archaeologists confirm the site's age over 10,000 years of continuous human use, but dismiss the talk of giants. The red hair, they say, is just dark hair bleached by minerals and time. The oversized sandals and tools may have belonged to tall, but otherwise normal humans. Still, the legend refuses to die. The Paiute people maintain their story of the Sitaka, and similar tales of giant beings echo in oral traditions, from the southwest to Mesoamerica. Inside Lovelock Cave, the air feels heavy, the silence almost watchful. Whether myth or memory, the story of the giants endures because something about the place feels older than explanation, as if the walls themselves remember the flames far away. In the quiet plains of Louisiana, gentle ridges and mounds hide one of the oldest and most astonishing archaeological sites in North America. From the ground, Poverty Point looks like rolling hills, but seen from above, it reveals a vast semicircle of concentric earthen ridges and monumental mounds, perfectly aligned with celestial patterns. Built over 3,000 years ago, around 1700 BCE, by indigenous peoples who had no metal tools or beasts of burden, it was a city of geometry and intention. The largest mound, shaped like a giant bird, rises more than 70 feet high, made from hundreds of thousands of tons of earth moved one basket at a time. Artifacts from distant lands, flint from the Ohio Valley, copper from the Great Lakes, jasper from the Appalachians show that Poverty Point was a hub in a continent-spanning trade network. Yet its builders left no writing, no palaces, no record of rulers. Around 1100 BCE, the site was abandoned. No signs of war or destruction remain, just silence. Its people vanished as quietly as they appeared, leaving behind the question of how a civilization so advanced could fade without trace. Standing on its highest mound at sunrise, as light spills across the ridges, one feels not emptiness but presence, a reminder that history is far older and far quieter than we were taught to believe. Thousands of miles away, beneath the volcanic plains of Cappadocia in central Turkey, another mystery lies hidden. Deep below the surface, stretched tunnels and chambers forming vast underground cities, Derinkuyu, among them capable of housing 20,000 people or more. Entire worlds carved into rock, stables, kitchens, schools, wine presses, chapels, and ventilation shafts descending hundreds of feet. Rolling stone doors could seal entire levels from intruders. Archaeologists date these subterranean networks to the 8th century BC, expanding through Byzantine times, but the deeper levels suggest something older, possibly prehistoric. How ancient builders carved and ventilated such depths remains unexplained. Why they did so is another riddle. Were they hiding from war, persecution, or a cataclysm above the earth? Some believe they sheltered from invasion, others from the wrath of the skies. In Cappadocian folklore, the tunnels were made by jinn, beings of shadow and fire. Whatever the truth, these underground labyrinths remind us that even in antiquity, people prepared not just for life, but for survival. Beneath modern houses, forgotten corridors still wait to be uncovered, whispering that humanity's greatest stories might lie not above ground, but below it. Across the plains of South Asia, the ruins of Harappa and Mohenjo-daro tell of yet another world and urban civilization that flourished 5,000 years ago. Along the Indus and the vanished Sarasvati rivers, its streets formed perfect grids. Houses had bathrooms and running water. Massive public baths, granaries, and drainage systems reveal engineering precision that wouldn't reappear for millennia. Unlike Egypt or Mesopotamia, there are no grand tombs or statues of kings. The Indus people built cities, not monuments. Their script remains undeciphered, their rulers unknown, their gods unnamed. When their civilization declined around 1900 BCE, it left behind no sign of war or conquest, only abandoned streets and silent wells. Perhaps climate change, river shifts, or disease brought their end. Yet their legacy is one of quiet brilliance, a society that valued balance, cleanliness, and order over conquest and vanity. And before even they rose, there were the Sumerians, who spoke of older kings who ruled before the flood, beings who reigned for thousands of years. Beneath their temples in Eridu, older temples lie buried, layer upon layer, as though civilization itself had been built upon forgotten civilizations. Their language, like their origins, has no known relative. They appear in history fully formed, as if awakened from another world's memory. Their myths tell of a shining rival across the mountains called Arata, a place of artisans and divine wealth that some now suspect may have been real, perhaps in the highlands of Iran, where new discoveries reveal ancient cities older than Sumer itself. If so, then even the first civilization we know was looking back to something earlier, something already lost. And across the Atlantic, in the sandstone cliffs of the American Southwest, the ancestral Pueblones built their stone cities into the canyon walls, Mesa Verde, Chaco Canyon, places of ceremony and astronomical precision. Then, suddenly, they left. Food, tools, fires, all abandoned. Some say drought drove them away. Others whisper of spiritual upheaval. Still others of something far stranger. Their descendants, the Hopi and Zuni, say their ancestors did not vanish but moved on when the time was right, guided by the spirits to begin anew. And under the sea, off the coast of Japan, lie the stone terraces of Yonaguni, submerged monuments shaped like steps and platforms. debated endlessly by scientists. Natural formation, or the drowned remains of a prehistoric city. The ocean keeps its secrets, just as the sands, the mountains, and the caves keep theirs. From the deserts of Africa to the depths of the Pacific, these stories form a single thread, humanity's long and fragile memory. Civilizations rise, shine, and fall, leaving behind only stones, whispers, and questions. The earth remembers even when we do not. Somewhere beneath the dust, the sand, or the sea, the past still breathes, waiting to be found again.